Shabadoo.
I think if you had to pick the quintessential dish that I grew up with, it would be soup beans and cornbread. Now, soup beans in the Appalachian South is just another way of saying pinto beans, and there's a very particular way that we like to do it, and I'm going to show you how to make the best soup beans you've ever had. Alright, so just a pound of regular pinto beans, and actually, if you have oh shoot, what do you call it? A Latino store, a Mexican store anywhere in your neighborhood, get them there because they're a lot better buy than at the regular supermarket. But even if you're buying them at the regular supermarket, they're so inexpensive and they're so good for you. So that, that's a win-win. All right, so all I'm doing is kind of going through these slowly. It rarely happens anymore. Matter of fact, I can't think of the last time I found one, but sometimes you'll get a tiny little stone in here. When I was little, you used to find them all the time. You don't find them anymore. Not very much. But you also, if you've got a funky bean, you want to get rid of the funky bean. You don't find funky beans much anymore either. Alright, now, I'm doing something that is not the way my mother or my grandmother did it. Something that I discovered a few years ago, and I actually love the results. I think this ends up being better, sorry, Mom, than what I grew up on. But we're going to brine our beans. Now, don't freak out by the amount of salt that I'm about to use, because it's not going to end up in the finished dish, right? But I've got a good half cup of kosher salt. Go ahead and use kosher salt. Don't try to substitute table salt for this. It's just not going to have the same results. So that goes in here. And most of the time when you're doing dried beans, there are some beans that it's better to soak overnight. This is one of them. Kidney beans, pinto beans, black beans, all of those really benefit from a good soak overnight. And you can also do what's called a quick soak method, which is where you bring them to a boil, turn the heat off, and let them sit for an hour. Well, once I realized you could do that, I don't think I've soaked beans overnight in 15 years. So brining is a combination of that quick soak method and brining. So that's not a brining in the combination of that. Brining is a part of that. All right, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to stick these on the stove with all of that salt and all that water. You want enough water to cover them real well, but you don't have to worry about measurements. Matter of fact, at no point in this recipe do you have to worry about measurements. They're really forgiving. But all I'm going to do is bring these up to a boil, turn the heat off, and let them sit for about an hour, okay? So chances are I will see you after they've soaked, and I'll show you how to do the next step. So our beans, what did we do? What were we doing when we left off? They came to, we're brining the beans. So they came to a boil, and I turned it off. I set the timer for an hour, and they've just been sitting here. And remember, this is the very, very, very salty water. It's a brine. We want to get the salt into the inside of the bean, right? So that's why we're using the brine method. It also helps with the texture. They get so nice and creamy. But we don't want to keep all that salt in there. The salt has kind of done its job and then some. So you're not going to like that. So Ricky just picked up a bean. And not only are they incredibly salty, they're rock hard. Alright, so we're going to rinse them off. And he just spit the bean out.
No, it's just the texture.
Yeah.
Tastes fine.
Not your favorite thing, huh? Alright, so we're adding water back in here. Now this is one of those things that is kind of funny. There's no exact measurement. I would tell you to start with 6 to 8 cups of water, because these are going to simmer with the top off. Half of what you're after here is the pot liquor, which is the liquid that comes from cooking the beans. So we like lots of pot liquor in our family. That's what you dip your cornbread or your hoe cakes or your white bread in. You got to dip something in it. We like lots of pot liquor, right? It's a little bit heavy. Now, the only 2 things that are going to go in here are this. Now, these onions are little. I don't know why they're so small. I got a bag of onions. Every one of them's tiny. So they're tiny, so I'm going to use 2. And the other thing is the Southern Cook's best friend. I almost feel like I should be kicked out of the club because my bacon grease is not in a mason jar, and I'm sorry. I broke the last one I had when I moved. I have to buy some more. My apologies. But I keep this in the fridge. This is my bacon grease. I'm trying to figure out how I can give you a measurement on this. Here's my wooden spoon. I want to say 1/4 cup. I'm going to call that a 1/4 cup. And then I'm going to not talk about that anymore. But that's our bacon grease. And for traditional Appalachian soup beans, you have to have the bacon grease. Now, if you're some kind of, oh, I don't know, rebel, don't want to use bacon grease, I have seen ham bouillon cubes, and they're actually not so bad. If you have a great Mexican market, look there if your regular grocery store doesn't have them. Use the bacon grease, guys. And that's for the whole pot. So you're gonna get like what, half a teaspoon per serving. It's not gonna kill you. All right, final thing, and then we're done. I said two ingredients, but that red pepper wanted to be in there because it jumped out of the cabinet. All right, we're gonna use a little bit of red pepper flake. I'm gonna call it 1/8 of a teaspoon. I don't know what that really is. I'm gonna call it 1/8 of a teaspoon. Not too much. You want to give it a hint of something, but you don't want it really hot. All right, so I'm gonna clean all the red pepper flake off my counter real quick. This is gonna come up to a boil. I'm gonna reduce it to a simmer. I'm gonna stick it on the back burner of my stove, and I'm gonna let it go for a few hours. After about 3 hours, I start tasting, and I usually give it a total of 4 hours to get completely done. So when these are ready to eat, I'll show you what they look like. So our soup beans actually got turned off. In all the hullabaloo yesterday, somehow somebody was being helpful and turned the stove off, which meant we had rock hard beans when it was time for supper. So I threw it in the oven. I threw it in the refrigerator. And that's okay, because beans are one of those dishes that's actually better the next day. And all I did was pull it out, simmer it off for about an hour, and they're good to go. So I'm gonna show you how we like them. Now, a traditional thing to do with your soup beans, of course, is cornbread. And I've got a video on how to do an old-fashioned cast iron skillet cornbread, buttermilk cornbread. And that's been up for a while, and I'll post a link through to it. But something else that we like to do are hoe cakes. And I just did a video on how to do these wonderful green onion hoe cakes. So that's actually what I'm going to put on here. Something else traditional, which I don't have at the moment, but which is wonderful, is chow chow, which is a southern pickle relish. You can make it sweet or spicy, however you want it. And I like to do either white onion or a little green onion, and you gotta have your hot sauce. That's the best way to do it, because it's my way to do it. So, if I've been helpful at all, please do me a favor and give me a thumbs up. If you have a question, ask it in the comments below, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. I've got pages over at Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest, and I'd love to have a follow. And if you really want to help me, check out the new page I have on Patreon. It's a great way to keep these videos coming in a really timely manner. I'm also going to post the link to the complete written recipe in the description box right there, so you'll be able to hop on over to the website and see how to make these and several hundred other recipes that I've got on there. So there you go, Southern Appalachian soup beans, green onion hoe cakes. And that's so good.